Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle. We are Wednesday today, so we're doing our interview style show, and we're talking in phase 7 of the Business Legal Lifecycle, which is about expansion, franchising, and what's the other one, Jeremy? Licensing.
Licensing.
Yeah? Yes, of course. I am Craig Mason. I have with me Jeremy, who's already spoken, and I failed to introduce him. So, Jeremy, welcome.
Thanks, Craig. Not a problem. I think our regular listeners will know who I am anyway. So
they will, indeed. So today we are doing our interview show, but it's not a special guest. It's still a special person, I guess, but special to the Business Legal Lifecycle, which is me interviewing Jeremy about phase 7 and sort of doing a bit of a deeper dive on some of the topics that have come up over the last few shows. So I think we'll kick straight in, Jeremy, unless you had an introduction that you wanted to outline.
I'm all good.
No?
I think let's get into it and give these people some good information.
Excellent. All right, so we're talking about expansion first. And I think everyone sort of knows the dictionary definition of expansion, but when we're talking about expansion from a business point of view, what are we actually talking about, Jeremy?
Yeah, so this is a really important question for people to understand. So expansion, this is when, the straightforward definition is this is when you're expanding your business. But there's different ways to think about it, different ways to really think about expansion. And that can be, maybe you're opening up a new business location. So if you've got a retail shop or a business premises, you might want to open up a new location. So, if you're a law firm like we've got, maybe you're opening up a second location there, or if you're just a retail shop, you're opening up another business there. You can also expand by entering into a franchise. So we'll talk about that a bit later, no doubt. But a franchise, is a way of getting other people to use your intellectual property for your business. So that's another way to expand. And another way is to license. So when you're running a business, you've got intellectual property, and that intellectual property it can be used by different business owners if you license them to do that. So you can license it. So they're really the 3 main ways to expand your business. And we clump them all together here and put them in this phase because really, and anyone who's seen the Business Legal Lifecycle, and if you're listening to the podcast, check out businesslegallifecycle.com.au. You'll see that phase 7 comes after the bottom of the dip. So, we talk about this a bit in Business Legal Lifecycle TV and the podcast about the fact that, the way that we structured the Business Legal Lifecycle was that there was some sort of dip in business. And we chose that in phase 4, bringing on employees, because normally when you bring on an employee, there's going to be some sort of dip in your business. And that can be a good or a bad thing. It can be for many different reasons. It can be income. It can be the time that you spend on your business. The idea about the dip and what we call the consolidation phases, which are 4, 5, and 6, is that you're consolidating your business to get ready for this phase. You're getting ready for expansion. So that's really what we're talking about here. And so, Craig, I think that's a good definition of what is expansion.
Excellent. The next question I had was regarding expanding, obviously, but what are the key considerations that you should be thinking about when you've come to the decision that you want to expand your business?
Yeah, I think I'll put this into 2 different categories, and I talk about this in the book, but I'll talk about it a bit more here about the important and dangerous considerations that people need to think about. So the really important things to think about before you expand are all my systems, processes, and procedures in place so that I'm not running into problems when I expand. And this comes into a topic that we've talked about before here at Business Legal Lifecycle TV and the podcast about problems multiplied. So if you're expanding your business and you have a problem, when you expand, your problems are going to be multiplied. It's really exponential, the problems that happen if you don't get them sorted out. So make sure that you get your systems, processes, and procedures in place properly so that if you're going to expand, franchise, or license, that you've got those things in place. you need to think about what other markets your business can expand into and what the benefits of it expanding are to your brand and business. It's very true to say that if you're not growing, then you're going backwards, but you don't want to expand for expansion's sake. And there is a line that you need to reach, and really, there's a line that you've got to straddle to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You've got to think about, do you have a product that other business owners want to use? So, whilst it might be good for you, you need to think about what other business owners or just people in general might want to use. And also, you need to think about, do you want to bring in a specialist to manage the expansion? So there are consultants that you can get advice from that can actually help you to expand, and maybe you might want to bring one of those in to actually help you to do that. Dangerous considerations, and these are always the fun ones because these are ones that we see people fall foul of all the time. The first one is, I can fix all my problems later. Don't fall into this trap. If you've got a problem, fix it straight away. Get it fixed. Make sure that you're not, just trying to solve all your problems early on and fix your problems, straight away. Don't just think you can fix them later. That's a recipe for disaster. Another dangerous consideration is it does not matter that I do not have my systems in place. People just buy into my system and we'll just figure it out as we go. Again, especially if you're franchising or licensing your intellectual property, this is a huge one. People are buying your intellectual property. And the same can be true for if you're expanding your business. If you're bringing on new team members and opening up another premises, people are buying into your system. That they want to be part of your system. So if you don't have your systems in place, as I said before, then that's going to be a problem. Another dangerous consideration is not thinking that you have a brand to protect. In phase 5, protecting intellectual property, we talk about protecting your IP, obviously. If you haven't done it before that and you don't think you've got something that is worth protecting, then this is a time to really get your head out of the sand and make sure that you're doing it properly. Another really dangerous consideration is that you don't want to lose control of your business. If you don't want to lose control of your business, then just keep your business the way that it is. Don't worry about expansion. So make sure that if that's your attitude, then that's fine, and it's horses for courses. But if you want to expand, then you need to lose some control of your business. Another really, really dangerous consideration is that I should be doing this because everyone else tells me that I should. Just because other people tell you that you should be doing something doesn't mean that you need to do it. You've got to make sure that you're doing it for your right reasons. And the last dangerous consideration, actually second last dangerous consideration, is I will work between the multiple business premises and control everything. When you have multiple premises for your business, there will be times when you won't be in both. So you need to work between both premises and make sure that you're doing and the management structure works between both. And the last dangerous consideration, and I can't believe I almost forgot this one, and that is that you can't trust anyone else with your business. Again, if you're going to do any sort of expansion, then you need to trust other people in your business. Otherwise, you may as well just run your business yourself and treat it as a job. So Craig, I don't know whether you've got anything else for that, but I think that's a good summary of the important and dangerous considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. Great information there. And just moving on with the last question, sort of around the general topic of expansion. What are some of the other factors that people need to look out for when they're doing the expansion? And then we'll go into another couple of questions specifically about some of the unique things that happen when you're expanding.
Yeah, sure. And this is a really good and important question, so thanks for asking it, Craig. And I think this is really important to understand for the people who are listening or the people watching our show. Whether this is the first time or the 5th time that you've expanded, you need to consider the same factors in relation to your business. So if you're leasing new premises, you need to really consider that lease. And I think you and I, we'll go through that in a minute, Craig. But what are the terms of the lease? What is that lease all about? How do the terms of any arrangement that you have with your current business sit with your future plans? So with your current team, you've got to make sure that you're thinking about these things and how the current arrangements that you have actually fit within your new business plans. How will your employees interact? And this is something that you and I, Craig, we made sure that we worked out pretty well when we expanded, was make sure that the team, when you've got 2 different offices, actually talk to each other. Because if people aren't talking to each other, then that can cause problems. So make sure that if you've got a team, that they're talking to each other in both locations. What systems do you have in place that will assist? So we've all got great systems and procedures in our business. So we want to make sure that those systems and procedures are congruent between the 2 premises and that they actually work together. And you need to also think about all of these aspects. And as I said before, it doesn't matter whether you've got 2 locations, 5 locations, or 100 locations. They're all really important. and you need to do some critical thinking to make sure that they actually work well together.
Absolutely. All right. So I think it's pretty correct in saying that this is not something you want to rush into when you're expanding your business. You want to consider all these factors and things that can happen, carefully before you jump into it. Because if you don't, you may come into some trouble in the future. So we encourage everyone, if they're thinking about it, to listen to what Jeremy's been saying about the factors that need to be considered and the considerations that you have to have. And particularly the dangerous ones there that you if you've got any of those, then perhaps expanding is not right for your business. So you mentioned leasing, so let's go on to that now. Why is it important for a business to have a lease when they're moving into a new premise?
Yeah, this is a really important question, Craig, and it's something that we talked about in Phase 2 Startup when we did the training on that a couple of months ago. If you're using a business premises, then you need to lease those premises. You need to enter into a lease. The reason is that we're recording this in 2018, and really you can't just do things on a handshake. Unfortunately, people's words aren't as good as they used to be, and you need to have a handshake. You need to have an agreement with the landlord to make sure that your terms of the lease are agreed to, and also to protect you. So, one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, and I was just talking about this with one of our team this morning, Craig, was the indefeasibility of title. And we don't often talk about complicated legal terms, but basically what that means is that if you don't have a lease in place and it's not properly registered, and the landlord sells the building, then you can actually lose your right under the lease. You can actually lose the lease. And a lot of people don't realize that. So you need to make sure that you're getting the right lease in place, because if you don't, then you can actually lose the lease, which is the important thing for your business. So having a lease is really important to define the terms and to protect yourself moving forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Very important lease. As Jeremy said, handshake's not the way to go with this sort of stuff. And with any contract, it gives clarity to both parties as well, which I think a lot of people miss when they think about legal documents, that it's all one-sided between to one party, but it gives clarity for everyone as to how it's going to go. So definitely important to have a lease. And so everyone's agreed to have an actual written lease. What are the sorts of things that you need to look out for and making sure that they're in the lease or not in the lease, depending on who you're acting for?
Yeah, so this depends on the type of premises that you have. So if you're a retail shop, you've got to make sure that there's all the things that are usually required in a retail shop lease. If it's a commercial lease, then you need to make sure that all the terms are commercial, and it's same for industrial. So you need to look at the terms of an offer to lease or an agreement to lease. So you need to look at what incentives are in place, what the length of the lease is, what happens at the end of the lease, what rent you're going to have to pay, all of these things that you're going to have to pay, what insurance you need to pay. So these are all expenses that you need to have in place. If you want to, if people are interested, you can go back and have a look at our previous shows on Phase 2 on this. But those are the key things to look out for: the type of premises, the terms of any incentive, the length of the lease, what rent you got to pay, what insurances you got to have in place, what other payments you might have to make under the lease, and then what happens at the end of the lease. Because a lot of people don't realize that you get this beautiful fit out of your lease, and then you need to actually go and remove that all at the end, and that's an extra expense that you need to factor into at the end of your lease.
Absolutely. So you mentioned insurance. Did you want to touch on the important insurances to have in place for a business?
Yeah, sure. So insurances are, there's a few of the different insurances that you need to have in place. Some of them are your landlord, not landlord's insurance, that's for the landlord. your product liability insurance, your liability insurance for what's it called, Craig?
Your general liability.
General liability insurance, that's the one. And your liability for your team, your work cover insurance, all those kind of ones are really important to have in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the landlord is going to have some insurances that they'll require as well. Yeah, about
Yeah.
glass and various other things?
Yeah, so they want glass, they want public liability insurance, they want all those things. Even if the landlord has insurance, you should get insurance too, just to be sure. Because even say for your own chattels and your own bits and pieces in the premises, you want to make sure that they're insured. It's always better to be over-insured to make sure that if something does happen, that you're covered.
Absolutely. Alrighty. We'll move into franchising. There might be some more insurance here as well when we get to it. But everyone sort of talks about franchising and McDonald's and various other things. But what's the difference between a franchise, as we know it,
Yep.
and something else that sort of floats around this area, and that's a license? So what's the difference between a franchise and a license?
Yeah, and before I just explain that, I'll explain the importance of this. And that the importance is that a franchise is a really complicated document to put together. It costs a bit of money. So a lot of people go, I'll just do a license. And they think that it's saving them money, but it can end up costing them a lot in the future. So the main difference between a franchise and a license is that a franchise is actually a regulated document in Australia. So in other countries like the UK, where we're launching at the end of the month, and the US, where we're hopefully launching the first half of 2019, they don't have regulation on franchises. But in Australia, a franchise is an agreement that essentially sets out the terms of the relationship, and it gives the franchisor a lot of control over the franchisee's business, what they can do, what prices they can set, all those kind of things. And so a franchise can set a lot of rules. At the same time, it licenses the use of intellectual property that you own. So you might license a trademark, you might license the use of certain systems and procedures to a franchisee, and they can use those under the franchise agreement. And in exchange, the franchisee pays a franchisor costs, royalties, training fees, license fees, all those kind of things. A license is really just the license to use intellectual property. So, without any real restrictions. So if you want to have a license in place, you can allow someone to use your license of your intellectual property, whereas a franchise gives them more control. So I know it's a bit of a long answer, but I think it's an important distinction for people to understand.
Absolutely. All right. So could you give us sort of 2 or 3 benefits of starting a business as a franchise, and then flip that over and say 2 or 3 problems that you might encounter when you start a business as a franchise?
Yeah, so these are pretty simple. The first one is that a franchise should be a proven system. So like McDonald's, like Burger King's or Hungry Jack's or KFC's, these are proven systems. They've got manuals which are very, very thick and go through all of the systems and procedures of the business. That's what you need to aim for if you're a franchisee or franchisor, and if you're going to expand your business as a franchisor. And if you're a franchisee, you want to make sure that your franchisor has done all this done properly, because when they're done correctly, they can be great and they can be worth a lot of money, and you can get a lot of benefit out of it. But if they're not done correctly, then that can cause you a lot of problems, and that's really where the problems occur. So there are a lot of dodgy operators out there. And you need to have a good manual. One of the things that I always say when we have franchisors come to us is, do you have a manual in place? And so often you get a blank look, and we'll send them off with our franchise operations manual template and say, go and write this. And really they look at us blankly, but this is the real value of what you're supplying. And I can't stress this enough at this point. One of the problems I see is that people don't want to spend the time writing a manual, and they'll pay someone 40, 50 grand to write it. Don't do that. Write your own manual. You know how to operate your business. You know the benefits of what's going to happen in your business. You need to make sure it's all done correctly. So write your own manual. And if you don't, then really you're going to be left with nothing. The business isn't going to really have anything. So I think those are the main pros and benefits and problems of starting a franchise, Craig.
Absolutely. All right, before we move on to the last topic that I wanted to ask you about today, was there anything else you wanted to mention to our listeners or our viewers about franchises or expanding the business?
Yeah, so the one here is just going back to the insurance topic and the types of insurances. And franchisees are often required to have insurance, and so are franchisors. And you really need to make sure that you got your general liability, your product liability, your professional liability, your workers' compensation insurances in place, and business interruption insurance as well. Again, if you want to check out more about those type of insurances, then check out our previous shows in Phase 2 Startup.
It goes back to as well with startup and getting your initial team. One of those should be a good insurance broker who can sort all that stuff out for you, and that you can continue to use over the expansion of your business. Alrighty, excellent. The last topic I want to talk about is merging and acquisitions of businesses. So again, it's a sort of term that gets thrown around a lot, particularly in the legal community, about I'm a merger and acquisition lawyer. But what exactly are the terms mergers and acquisitions? What do they actually mean?
Yeah, and this is, thanks for raising this, Craig, because I actually forgot to raise this at the beginning when I was talking about the different ways to expand the business. This is actually a really common way for people to expand their business. So a merger is basically two businesses coming together and merging and becoming one business. An acquisition is a business acquiring another one. So both are used quite a bit in the different spaces. And really, the main difference where they're used is if you've got two equal businesses coming together, that's normally a merger. An acquisition is basically a bigger business subsuming a smaller one, or taking over that business. So that's the difference between a merger and an acquisition.
Okay. And so how are mergers and acquisitions actually used when we're talking about expanding businesses?
Yeah, so another great question. And they're used in expanding businesses really to build the client base or the customer base of the business. So say if you're operating a shop and you want, and it's say a restaurant, and you want to expand to another premises, you can actually expand to another business and take over that business and change its name, and you've got the existing fit out already there. You might want to make some changes, but you can use that to expand. You might want to merge. So we've had clients in professional services, say accounting businesses, where they're two equal businesses and they want to come together and make one big business, and they want to actually become equal owners. Well, that's a merger. They become, and they start up a new entity at the end of it. And acquisitions, we do acquisitions all the time for businesses, and usually it's where they want to expand their business. So both of them can be used, and they can be used quite effectively for expanding businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally with this topic, so someone's looking at merging with someone or acquiring a new business. What do they need to look out for? That's a pretty broad sort of question, but if you could give us, say, a couple of things for merging and a couple of things to look out for acquisitions.
The merging, I'd say, probably the most important thing to remember is that when you're merging, you're going into business with someone else. It's like starting up a business, and what we talk about in phases 1 and 2, conception and startup, around making sure that you can actually work together with someone as a business partner, really apply at the merger stage, because you've got to make sure that you're looking out for these are people that you can actually work with. These are people that you can actually do things with and together on a regular basis. So that's probably the first thing I'd look out for mergers. I'd also encourage people to really do their due diligence in a merger. Not only on the people that you're expanding with, but their financials, their systems and procedures, and really their systems and procedures of how they will integrate with you and your business. Because at that point in time, when you're doing a merger, you need to make sure that you can work together. Not only that, but you also need to make sure that your systems can work together, and that can be really problematic. In an acquisition, really, again, when you're acquiring someone else's business, you want to look at what you're actually acquiring and what's the benefit that you're actually getting, and making sure that you actually put that down on paper and make sure that you actually are getting what you're after. You want to make sure when you're acquiring that you're not paying too much for the business. I know that might seem obvious, but there can often be an argument where people really argue over the price and want to get the best benefit and all the rest of it. But you want to make sure that that's not you, and that you're not paying too much for the business. And then finally, really with an acquisition, you really want to make sure that you look at the financials of the business, and you want to make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet for the business as well. Because when you acquire a business, you can sometimes take on liability depending on the structure that you use. You want to make sure that there's no hidden liabilities that you haven't thought of. They're the most important things, Craig, that I can think of that you need to look out for mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it makes sense. As you said, you're buying someone else's business or merging with them, so definitely want to do your due diligence. I think that's probably the most important one out of all that, is make sure you look for the skeletons. Hopefully there isn't any, and if there are, then you can sort them out before you move in, as it were. So, all right. So we've touched on expansion today through moving into new premises or expanding that way, franchising by expanding by creating a whole new business, which is now a franchise business, and then merging and acquisition. So buying or merging with an existing business. Everything has been great, vast knowledge and experience from Jeremy that is shared with all of our listeners and viewers today. But Jeremy, just before we finish up, is there anything else that you wanted to add that's important for our listeners for today?
Yeah, I think probably the one thing I haven't touched on, and that's the theme that we often talk about, and that's to get advice. These aren't easy things to do. They're not things that you do every day. Get advice from your accountant, your lawyer, your business mentors, coaches, all the rest of that. Talk to these people, because at the end of the day, they've been there, they've done it before, they've seen other clients do it, other customers do it. Get advice. Don't try and do it all yourself. Business is a lonely place. We talk about that quite a bit in the books and in the podcasts and shows. Business is a lonely place. Acknowledge that. Get help. Don't just try and do it all yourself, because if you do, that's where we see people fail. And if you think it's expensive to get a lawyer at the beginning, think about how expensive it is to get a lawyer to fix up the problems after the fact. So get advice, do it properly, and you'll save yourself from a lot of the problems that we see people fall into far too often.
Yep. Great advice to get advice. You need it. Get your team together, and they'll become very important when you're doing things like expanding your business through these means. So, excellent. That is it for today. I didn't have any other questions. So this is show 150 today, Jeremy. So yep. We've halfway to another 100 shows. So thank you everyone for joining us. If you're interested in looking at the show notes, which I'd encourage everyone to do to get information from there. So it's show 150. So go to the website, businesslegal.lifecycle.com.au/150 for show 150. If you've got any other questions or any other topics that you want us to talk about, please get in contact with us. But we thank you all for joining us, and we thank Jeremy for the information that he shared. Jeremy, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
There's just one last thing, and that is for any of our viewers or listeners who are in the United Kingdom. I'm coming over for the 27th of November, if you're listening to this before that, to launch the Business Legal Lifecycle UK edition. If you're interested in that and want to check it out, please go to businesslegallifecycle.com.au/UK launch. And you'll see they'll take you to the Eventbrite page. It's been organised by our partners in the UK, Peregrine Law, and we'd really like to get as many people as we can to come along. And you can come along and meet me, get a copy of the book, and we're really excited to be expanding over to the UK.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. No. Go and check it out. Meet the author. He'll, as you said, he'll sign your book. Excellent. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you then.